When folks think of the Getty, they think of that huge art complex on top of the hill above the 405 freeway in Brentwood. But its lesser known, and arguably, in my humble opinion, better brother, is over in Pacific Palisades, right off Pacific Coast Highway. This is especially true if you are even the slightest fan of Roman and Greek history. Because if you are, have I got a museum for you. Pacific Palisades is a Los Angeles neighborhood and beach community nestled right between Malibu and Santa Monica, by the way. Immediately upon entering the Getty Villa, you are going to get your first hint at what's to come. A Roman-style aqueduct traversing over the driveway towards parking. The Getty Villa is an educational center and art museum that boasts a whopping 44,000 Greek, Roman, and Etruscan antiquities dating from 6,500 BC to 400 AD, including the Lansdowne Heracles and the Victorious Youth. Now, admission to the Getty Villa is free, but what you will find is $25 parking. So while the museum is free, quote unquote, you are really paying your admission at the parking entrance. Still, if you drive an electric vehicle like I do, there is free and unlimited level 2 charging, meaning your car will most likely be all the way charged up and ready to go by the time you come back for the drive home. Allow me to preface by saying that the collection we will be going over in this video here is only a fraction of what is on display. I truly believe that the fun of adventure and going to a museum like this is to explore and discover for yourself. So, all that said, consider this a little taste of what is here, as there are some even more incredible finds for you to discover yourself. The Getty Villa feels modern, as if it's 2025 and the Roman Empire never ended. But there are places around the property where you really do feel like you discovered Doc Brown's DeLorean. There is both a cafe and sit-down restaurant here, as well as a snack cart. As you can see from the menu from the grab-and-go style cafe, it's pretty pricey. I mean, $26 plus tax and tip for a chicken salad? That's going to come out to at least $35 a person for a salad from a cafeteria. But in complete fairness to the Getty, prices are in similar fashion to what you'll find around the villa. And of course, you don't have to eat here. All that said, the food is very good, and I highly recommend grabbing a bite here if you can stomach the prices. No pun intended. I had the Villa burger last time, and it was comparable to a sit-down restaurant, not a cafe. I think it comes from the same kitchen as a sit-down restaurant because it really is that good. The Getty Villa was originally owned by Paul J. Getty to house his extensive collection of Roman and Greek artifacts from antiquity. It was specifically designed to look like the real-life and original Villa of Papyri, which was located in Herculaneum and unfortunately succumbed to the horrors of the Mount Vesuvius eruption of 79 AD. But the villa lives on through his faithful modern take on the original. Walking down one of the hallways in the outdoor courtyards, can you imagine walking down this path with a Roman senator? You've waited months for this big moment, and your request to have a short meeting has finally been granted. Or maybe you are the senator and the villa owner, and out for a morning stroll before departing for business in Rome. Or perhaps you are a slave, on your way to your duties attending the garden. From the ceiling, to the fresco on the walls, the windows, the decorated floorboards, the art tile, the well-designed furniture, the impeccable garden. Everything is designed to make you feel like you are Roman royalty. And the intricate designs and small touches are everywhere across the property. What makes the gardens around the Getty Villa work so well is the fact that we have a similar Mediterranean climate here in SoCal. So most of these legitimate Italian plants grow remarkably well. Villas often focus internally around courtyard and atrium spaces to allow natural light and airflow, and would often feature additional fountains, gardens, and even statues. Elite villas, like the Getty Villa represents, tended to be a sprawling affair with many rooms for entertaining and dining, in addition to specialized facilities including heated baths. They would also often be out in the countryside, surrounded by woods, fields, and avenues, and were more comfortable than crowded city homes. It's not all Roman, though. The first floor of the Getty Villa largely houses a collection of irreplaceable, original Greek artifacts from antiquity. And why not? The Romans largely copied the Greeks, from admirers of their art to battle strategy to even copying their gods. There is something awe inspiring about standing before an original piece of art or statue made by your fellow human being over 2,000 years ago. Like this relief with a sphinx and a stag, Etruscan made between 575 and 550 BC. From left to right are a winged sphinx, a grazing stag, and a human leg dangling from an animal's jaws. Images of lions devouring limbs are distinctively Etruscan. Reliefs such as this, which decorated buildings and tomb entrances. Speaking of the Etruscans, the Romans dominate history because they beat out rivals during the Roman Republic and the Roman Empire. During the Roman Republic, the Etruscans were equally as amazing a society, eventually falling to Rome and becoming nearly forgotten before their own society was dug up. The Getty pays homage to this civilization from the mountains of central Italy, with a sizable collection of Etruscan artifacts. Look at it this way: the United States and all of our culture, achievements, history, family, hopes, and dreams being conquered in the future and disappearing from record. World War II, the moon landing, 9/11, injustices, tragedies, and triumphs all vanished beneath the ground until dug up several thousand years in the future by curious archaeologists who are surprised that one of our heroes on TV is an archaeologist himself, named after one of our states. Yes, cultures clash, rise, fall, and merge. And who is better an example of that than Egypt? Here's the head of Ptolemy IX, made in Alexandria out of marble between 116 to 80 BC. And who better an example of that than Alexander the Great himself, conqueror of Egypt, staring back at you after 2,343 years in the grave? I've always been amazed at how various metal is able to be polished back up to a near finish and a near perfect shine, almost as if you are browsing the markets of an ancient Walmart looking for some new housewares. Staring back at you like a ghost from the abyss is this, not king, but statesman or benefactor of a Greek city from 150 BC. Speaking of ghosts, here is the gravestone of a woman and her attendant. What shall she wear when she awakens into the afterlife? The Getty Villa has an extensive collection of, well, everything Greek, Etruscan, and Roman, including coins from all three civilizations. From left to right, forgive me if I mess up some of the names here. Alexander the Great, 288 to 281 BC, silver. Seleucus I of Syria, minted in Pergamon, silver. Ptolemy I of Egypt, minted in Alexandria, gold, 305 to 285 BC. Berenike II, wife of Ptolemy III of Egypt, minted in Alexandria, 246 to 221 BC, gold. Ptolemy III of Egypt, minted in Alexandria, 221 to 204 BC, gold. Demetrios I of Bactria, minted in Bactria, about 200 to 185 BC, silver. And Timachos I of Bactria, minted in Bactria, 185 to 170 BC, silver. And Mithridates VI of Pontus, minted in Pontus, 76-75 BC, silver. Alright, that was just a small taste of the first floor. Now as we make our way to the second floor, you will see where the majority of the Roman collection is stored. But first, an overlook of the courtyard. Check out these small bronze statuettes. Small bronze images of the gods were dedicated as votive offerings or venerated in household shrines. Statuettes of other figures, including athletes and actors, often decorated homes for amusement and delight. Even utilitarian items or objects such as keys and weights were often embellished with figural ornament and demonstrate the taste for sculpture in the classic world. The intricate work of these small objects made out of ivory, rock crystal, and limestone by craftsmen from thousands of years ago is truly something to behold. Actual lips touch these goblets. A real woman actually wore these bracelets. I mean, again, just the incredible tiny details in things such as a ring that would put today's model railroader hobbyists with their glasses and zoomed lens to shame. Then there's Greek and Roman glass. Around 1600 BC, craftsmen in Egypt and Mesopotamia began to create vessels made of glass, as well as colorful ingots that were traded as a commodity throughout the Mediterranean. It was produced by combining silica, found in sand or quartz, sodium carbonate, and lime obtained from seashell debris, and heating the mixture to at least 2012 degrees Fahrenheit. While in this molten state, glass was manipulated into a vast array of shapes. The Greeks learned glassmaking from their Phoenician and Egyptian neighbors around 600 BC. In this era, Greek glassmakers became proficient at the manufacturing of small flasks that could be sealed with a stopper and suspended from a cord or chain. By the 1st century AD, Glass vessels began to replace bronze and terracotta containers for drinking, dining, and food storage. Glassmakers employed a variety of techniques to manufacture and embellish these items, including casting in molds, engraving, and carving, blowing glass with an air pipe to create complex shapes, combining strands of molten glass to form patterned surfaces, and painting finished objects. The cool thing about mosaics is they look like any regular old painting. But zoom in and you'll see that they are in fact tiles. Hundreds or thousands of them. Piece by piece, made into one large piece of art, almost like an ancient jigsaw puzzle. My personal favorite pieces of ancient Roman treasures is, oddly enough, funerary reliefs, aka good old-fashioned tombstones. I love these most of all because it's more than art. As you gaze into that person's eyes, you only get a slight clue of who that person was, summed up in maybe a few lines if you're lucky. Not fantasy, but historical nonfiction of a real person that lived and died thousands of years ago. And there are literally thousands of these funerary reliefs, each with a story, and probably hundreds of thousands underground waiting to be discovered yet again. Walk along the original Appian Way, for example, and these are lined all along the road. In ancient Rome, the rule prohibiting burial within the city was that you couldn't bury people inside the pomerium, which was a symbolic boundary considered the edge of the city, effectively meaning burials had to take place outside the city walls to avoid contaminating the living space with the dead. This law was codified in the 12 Tables, Rome's ancient legal code. Here is a funerary relief of Publius Cartilius Agatho, a silversmith. This marble relief was made between 1 and 25 AD. The Latin inscription states his name, his profession, and the fact that he was a freed slave, while his toga indicates his status as a Roman citizen. This relief is typical of funerary monuments for freedmen, some of whom were skilled professionals who gained significant wealth. Such portraits adorn the facades of family tombs lining the roads in and out of Rome. Here's a relief of Popilius and Calpurnia. This was made between 1 and 20 AD in Rome, and it's also made out of marble. Popilius and his wife, Calpurnia, are identified as freed slaves in the Latin inscription on the window like frames surrounding their portraits. This type of funerary monument was commissioned by the families of former slaves as a sign of their elevated social status. Here's an example of a cinerary chest, made in Rome between 20 and 40 AD, out of marble with traces of pigment. In the 1st century AD, the dead were usually cremated. The ashes were placed in a marble cinerarium, aka cinerary chest, which was displayed in a niche in the family tomb. The flowers and birds decorating this example symbolize fertility and rebirth. This is the relief altar of Caltilius and Caltilia, made in Rome between 100 and 125 AD, out of marble. Altars were popular Roman funerary monuments in the early 2nd century AD. This example features portraits of a husband and wife who are identified in the Latin inscription, which states, "To the souls of the deceased, Lucius Caltilius Stephanus and Caltilia Mosius." Caltilius is shown as an older man with hollow cheeks and sagging flesh. His wife wears a hairstyle favored by women in the court of Emperor Trajan, who ruled between 98 and 117 AD. This funerary monument honors a girl who presumably died between 120 and 140 AD when this particular monument was made. It shows a young girl lying on a couch petting a dog while she looks at 2 dolls resting at her feet. This monument served as the lid of her sarcophagus. The Latin inscription engraved on the lower edge reads, in part, "Here lies the most beautiful girl. What a pity at such a young age." This funerary relief honors Helena. Now, I know what you're thinking, and yes, while it's true that the Romans did, in fact, make reliefs and monuments to their beloved pets, this one is, in fact, for a young girl named Helena, made between 150 and 200 AD. As you can see, a Maltese dog sits in a small shrine. The Latin inscription reads, "To Helena, foster daughter, incomparable and praiseworthy soul." Helena may have been a small child, perhaps even a beloved slave, and the dog, likely her favorite pet. Speaking of Roman pets, one of my favorite inscriptions to a Roman pet and memorial reads, "I am in tears while carrying you to your last resting place, as much as I rejoiced in bringing you home with my own hands 15 years ago." It really does go to show that pets are family, and the Romans were not that different than you and I, were they? I should mention that this memorial is not at the Getty, and it's the only one in this video that's not featured at the Getty Villa. It's just something I thought was worth mentioning. But by far, my favorite piece in the entire collection at the Getty Villa is that of Martial. Martial was a slave who lived between 100 and 115 AD. The text on the bust reads, "Sweetest Martial, a houseborn slave who lived 2 years, 10 months, and 8 days. Tiberius Claudius Vitalis made this monument for him. Well deserving." For his short 2 years, 10 months, and 8 days of life, all he knew was slavery. But what makes this particular monument even more amazing and extraordinary is Romans didn't typically dedicate busts to their slaves, as it was fairly expensive to commission them, and they were often reserved for family. This very likely meant that Martial's owner was very fond of the child, and likely devastated when he died. Maybe the owner of Martial thought of him as his own child. Look into Martial's eyes and see the face of an innocent child that was here for a short stay on Earth 2,000 years ago. My second favorite piece at the Getty Villa is also a funerary relief. This time, though, we're traveling to ancient Greece. Police has a message for you over 2,500 years ago. He only wanted the world to know one thing, and conveniently, it's written right here on his tombstone. "I, Police, dear son of Asopichos, speak. Not being a coward, I, for my part, perished at the hands of the tattooers." The tattooed enemies Police is referring to were the Thracians, a tribe from the north that fought on the side of the Persian invaders in the war of 480 to 479 BC. Although the Greeks were victorious, Police lost his life. From one former warrior to another, I salute you, Police. There are, of course, famous emperors here as well, such as Augustus, Germanicus, Caligula, and the women associated with the rich and famous, such as Agrippina the Younger, Livia Drusilla, and last but not least, and most likely, Octavia Minor. We're actually not sure 100%, but it's believed this is Octavia Minor. Just off the courtyard on the first floor is a mock-up of what a Temple of Hercules might have looked like. Enjoy. And one of the last attractions I thought I might show you is also another mock-up of what a Temple of Venus might have looked like. Although on a much smaller scale, still it gives you an idea of what walking into a Temple of Venus might have looked like, I suppose. Minus all the people in modern clothing. As you've probably seen through this video, the Getty Villa is very busy and often packed and very popular. But there are plenty of quiet places where you can stow away and maybe have some thoughts to yourself. Little nooks, gardens, ponds, fountains. Lots of places where you can kind of pause and reflect and get away from the crowds. If you do decide to come to the Getty Villa, definitely check out the bookstore before you leave. There's definitely something here for everybody on your list. Everything from jewelry to snacks to remake of ancient coins, books, and even stuff for the kids, such as children's books and toys. In fact, I'm not ashamed to say that I picked up a child's book when I was here last time. It's a very fun read, too. Highly recommend it if your kids are even 1% interested in ancient Rome. So that's a very brief down and dirty overview of the Getty Villa in Pacific Palisades. Please, let me stress again that what you saw in this video was only a fraction of the collection on display. There is so much to see and explore here, you could easily spend the entire day. And if you are a true Roman history buff like me, you're going to need 2 or 3 days to get through everything. The Getty Villa is open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m., and entrance to the museum is free, but does require reservations on their website. I will leave the website information in the description. This place is wildly popular and sells out, even midweek. If coming to the Getty Villa, plan ahead and be sure to make reservations between 1 and 2 weeks in advance, and even earlier for popular dates such as holiday weekends. I highly recommend coming early, because by the afternoon, it's more akin to a convention than museum. By afternoon, you'll be shuffling around and trying to get past people, waiting for people to finish their turn, or feel the pressure of people trying to get you to move on from viewing an artifact. You know the feeling. And it sucks. So, if you're a true history buff like me, and actually like to read most of all the details, the food options here are very good. Very good, but very expensive. And like any good modern museum, they'll likely be able to cater to your dietary needs. Contact the museum for anything out of the norm, though. Unless you visit in the middle of winter, the end of your visit will warrant watching the sunset on nearby Castle Rock Beach. And by nearby, I mean literally across the street. Or take the time to visit Malibu or Santa Monica proper. Where most museums will charge you extra for an audio guide, you'll find none of that nonsense here. You can download the app free from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and bring it with you as a guide at the museum. Each artifact or painting or other treasure has a number on it that you can select to learn more details about it through the app. Okay, final note here. I was just finishing up editing on this video as the Palisades Fire broke out. The fire broke out literally 3 days after I visited the Getty Villa. And I was pretty stressed to hear about all the horror and destruction this fire wreaked upon the beach community of Pacific Palisades and the surrounding areas. But even more so, I was legitimately terrified of what happened to the Getty Villa, as reports were pretty spotty at best in the overnight hours of the fire, and it was clear the fire came right through where the Getty Villa is located, selectively destroying without mercy. It really goes without saying, the collections at the Getty Villa are literally beyond priceless and irreplaceable. As you probably know by the time this video is uploaded, the Getty Villa did in fact survive, and all of its treasures are intact inside. Honestly, thank God. Although most of the property around the buildings was burned, so that will take time to re-landscape. But as you can imagine, the Getty Villa is temporarily closed, which is understandable, but they will reopen. And if you're watching this video, they are probably already opened and dazzling visitors once again with one of the greatest collection of Greek and Roman artifacts outside the Mediterranean.